like to start all of these interviews off with a very simple question to lay the foundation for everyone watching. And that is, who are you? Why are you faceless? And how did you find yourself here talking with
Yeah, hi, nice to meet you, Patrick. Yeah, it's a true pleasure to be here. So I'm Kevin Wad. I'm the main developer of Etica protocol. And so the reason I'm faceless is because Etica is a community-driven project. So it's a true project run by the community, and I'm just a contributor of the project. So yeah, we like to. I don't want to be the face for the project or anything like this because it's a community-driven project. So that's the reason why. It's all about the tech and the crowd.
I like it. I like that. That sounds very Bitcoin-esque. And one thing that I found when I was researching Etica is the tokenomics are kind of like hinting towards a Bitcoin-esque tokenomics where there's 21 million tokens, correct?
Yeah, exactly. The main idea of Etica is to create a neutral protocol like Bitcoin and Monero. So it's a L1 blockchain. We have our own blockchain. It has started in 2022 in April. So yeah, Etica truly has this Bitcoin-like ethos, and Satoshi Nakamoto, what he did with Bitcoin, I think this is the example that we're trying to follow with Etica. So in this landscape of cryptocurrency that has changed over the last few years, and I think it has, to some extent, now it's very far from the beginning of crypto, when Satoshi Nakamoto released the white paper and the vision we have at this moment. So Etica is this project that we're trying to get closer and closer to this original vision of cryptocurrency.
I like it. Just decentralizing as much as humanly possible and making it really so that there is no one centralized point of failure, which is something like a lot of the projects, a lot of the companies that are building on blockchains are Web 2.5, a segue between the current infrastructure into a more decentralized infrastructure where a community actually has a voice. But it seems Etica is really like Web 3 in its foundation. I'm curious if you could talk to kind of the reason behind Etica and what the goal is, because on your website, it says you're trying to remove the need for researchers to go the intellectual property route. And so a lot of the focus in DeSci right now is getting tokenized intellectual property, but you guys are trying to create or have created a model in which researchers don't need to go that route.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I think this is like a very interesting question, and to some extent, this is the most important question. So, the reason why we want to create a system without intellectual property is not necessarily that we want to create a system like this, is because we believe that a system like this will be absolutely necessary in the near or the midterm future. The reason why I think is because of the emergence of new technologies like AI and quantum, and the fact that now the research is very different from 50 or like even more years ago, because right now we have the internet. So when you combine the internet with AI, quantum, and all of this, it means that now the information is like shared all over the world much faster than it used to. And if you want to keep a system based on intellectual property, it means that you want to create a system where you still have ownership of the ideas, but now the ideas are running extremely more faster than they used to. So we believe that in the future, there will be a need for a system without intellectual property, because in the future, the ideas and all this would be shared extremely more faster in the world. And I like to take the example of AI, the AI ecosystem, and the reason why open source is more efficient than any other system. And yeah, the Etica community is a broad community. Some people think that it's for charity, but personally, I think the main reason for Etica is not about charity; it's about efficiency. So if for instance, you take open source, so Etica is all about open sourcing medical research without intellectual property. And if we take the example of the AI ecosystem, we can see that over the past few years, we have seen a huge increase of developments, of discoveries, and the path of development has extremely accelerated in AI over the past few years. And I believe that one of the main reasons of this is because of open source. So when Google decided to open source the Transformers paper in 2017, then it gave the possibility for a lot of researchers all over the world to study, analyze the research, and make it their own. And so if Google didn't have done this back in 17, then OpenAI and a lot of AI companies that followed would not have existed because they would not have been able to have access to this information. So I believe that open source is definitely the most efficient way for a set of actors to share information and to find something. And this is what we have seen over the past few years. We have seen a huge acceleration in AI because of this. Websites like Archive and other websites where people had this, it kind of became a new like standard. Like researchers would share the research and all this. So we have seen this huge tendency to open sourcing the AI ecosystem. And I believe this is the reason why we have seen so much discoveries. Like even like just a few years ago, if you ask some people how long it will take to reach AGI, they would say it's going to take 30 years minimum, or a century, or even more than this. But now, thanks to the benefits of open source, we can say that potentially we will be to AGI in 1, 2, maybe 5 years. So yeah, I think this is how open source is extremely more efficient, and we want to bring this to the medical research, because the medical research is a system where intellectual property is extremely closed. It's a country of open source, and when you think about it, and when you think about the possibilities, if we can manage to create a system that is IP-less, and the potential impact on society and in the life of people, I think it's something that needs to be tried.
I agree with that, and I like that because your example with AI is spot on. Like if only OpenAI or closed AI, probably be called closed AI, if they were the only people that were actually experimenting with the technology that they were trying to develop, we would have just one organization trying to expand it. But now we have 10,000 organizations all at the same time trying different things and rapidly growing everything. And so keeping as much as possible in that open source landscape really just allows humans to progress exponentially quicker. My question for you as it comes to Etica is, how exactly do you make the medical data and the medical research open source? Because are you dealing with patient data directly, and wouldn't you have to keep it like siloed off, like compliant with the different regulatory bodies that exist worldwide?
Yeah, this is another very interesting question. So Etica is all about the research itself, and we are not like focused especially on the data. So with Etica, what we want is to create a system where the researchers, any researcher in the world, they could publish on the blockchain, and then there is a voting system, and in reward, in exchange for their work and their contribution, they can get paid immediately by the blockchain for their contribution. So that's the overview of the Etica system. Is a new system where anyone in the world can share open source medical research, and then within 3 weeks, get a reward for their contribution of open source research. So yeah, we are not focused on the medical data of patients. And so the researchers, when they publish on the blockchain, everything about the research is open source and visible. So then it's up to the researcher to decide what they want to keep private or what they want to keep public. But obviously, since it's open source research and it needs to be verifiable, so they cannot like keep everything private. So it's up to the researcher to determine what they want to make public and private. And then the Etica system, the Etica protocol, has a whole voting system that allows the network to decide which research gets funded and research doesn't get funded.
Okay, that makes sense. I like that. Could you talk on the entire voting protocol for a couple minutes? Because I know you guys have two different tokens that they can receive, correct? So if you could dive into the different periods and the voting threshold for getting research approved and everything.
Yeah. So first of all of the Etica protocol, the white paper was published back in 2019, and it was released in the Satoshi Nakamoto mailing list. So the whole system of the voting system is explained in the white paper, and this white paper was released on the Satoshi Nakamoto mailing list. So this mailing list is where Satoshi Nakamoto published the original Bitcoin white paper. This is where Satoshi Nakamoto announced to the world that of the Bitcoin project. So the Etica protocol is the only cryptocurrency white paper that was also shared and published and released in this mailing list. So the Etica system is based on, first of all, it's based on the idea of creating a new currency like Bitcoin, which is extremely scarce. So Etica ETI is the currency that finances the protocol, and ultimately it is this currency that is supposed to become to be a kind of replacement of the need for intellectual property. So this currency can be mined by anybody in the world, like people can mine Bitcoin. So the miners, if they want to mine ETI, they have to spend energy to mine it. And the other way to get ETI is to make public open source medical research. So the researchers, they can publish their research, medical research, and get ETI as a reward. The way it works is that every 7 days, so we call it a period. It starts every Thursday at midnight UTC. So every 7 days is a new period, and the protocol is going to issue fixed amount of ETI every period. So right now it's about 5,000 ETI per period, and then this fixed amount of ETI is what will reward all the research published on the protocol during the period. And the open source researchers can publish papers, and when they publish on the same period, they compete for the reward. So then there is a voting system, and if there are several proposals accepted, they're going to share the rewards in proportion of the votes they got. And so this is like an overview of the system. And then there is a staking system. So in order to vote on the proposal, a voter has to stake ETI. So when people stake ETI, it locks ETI for 28 days. And then they get a voting power token in exchange. And it will be token voting power that they can vote on proposals. But what happens is that if they vote on the winning side of the proposals, then they get a reward for the votes. And if they vote on the losing side, then they have a penalty system. So basically, there are two kinds of penalties on Etica. The first one is what we call the slash, which is a stake extension. So basically, if the stake was 28 days, maybe it's going to be 35 or 40 days. So it's going to be extended. And the second way is in extreme cases, it's possible to have a fee on the stake. But the fee for the voters never exceeds 10%, and it is extremely rare. So the main mechanism of penalization is to extend the stake duration of the votes. So the voting system of Etica has been running on the mainnet for now more than 2 years. And we are constantly improving the system. And right now the system is able to make a curation of the network in a completely decentralized way and to identify the best proposals. So it's a true success to have seen the protocol now operate from the white paper to see implemented and actually on use on a decentralized network.
That's very interesting model. I think it's a cool way to kind of merge the two industries, blockchain and then the scientific publishing industry. What, and a hard question, what would be stopping people from coming to the blockchain, coming to Etica and finding research and then taking it from there and still putting IP behind it? Like, kind of like, I don't want to say stealing from the open source bank, but like taking it, putting IP wall up on it, and then creating companies off of that IP after it's already been posted.
Well, every proposal published on Etica.school is published under a specific license. And this license is the same license that people use to, for instance, make open source software. And so it's for Etica, we took like the common law 4 license. But the main idea is that what is published on Etica is considered as open source because by default, any researcher that chooses to publish their research on Etica in exchange for a reward, to some extent, give up intellectual property rights and any intellectual property. So this is the necessity for the system, because right now, we know that in the traditional system, when the researchers they want to publish their research, so they have to, not only they are not paid, but they have to pay. And they have to pay thousands of dollars just to publish one paper. And then if they don't pay that, then it's the readers that have to pay $50 or $60 just to read one paper. So the Etica system creates a completely new system where there is no intellectual property, where the researchers, instead of having to pay, they are getting paid. And because of this is why they, to some extent, like they don't claim intellectual property for what they publish on the protocol. So now, what would prevent another entity to come on Etica and to some extent steal the open source work and to then try to put a patent on top of this? Well, this is a non-ethical behavior, and we have seen that there are some actors, of course, in the world that are trying to do this with patent trolls and all of this. But the main idea is to create a system that will prevent anyone from doing this. And then not only with the law and with the fact that it's published under the specific license that make the work open source should prevent anyone from stealing it. So if we see this kind of behavior, and we see that the fact that it's published under open source and is not enough because some jurisdictions decide to put some patents on top of open source research and all of this, then we would have to potentially make sure to also publish to patent the research and to make it open source. But that's like, so this is something that is not like about the core of the project, because we can deal with this, I think, in another stage of the project, because this would have to really require maybe then to take some other steps to protect the research. But normally the fact that people publish open source it's for instance, it's the exact same thing for when Meta make Llama 3 models. So it's published as open source. So then what could prevent anyone to take the Llama models and to make patents on it? Well,
it just wouldn't be respected. The industry just wouldn't respect it because they already see it's the same risk with any open source publications in that sense, whether it's OpenAI or any of the other things out there. That makes sense. I appreciate that. I know it's a little bit of a
because to some extent, this would be for me, like when I see all the challenges we have to face already just to reach to the current level, and the coming challenges as well for the project. This would be like the last kind of detail to handle, because then it's about the jurisdiction. For instance, about this, it's like for Bitcoin, for instance, when it started, it was all about the blockchain aspect. And then people started to think about the regulations, how this country is going to react to the fact that you do. So I think that for any blockchain project that wants to become a global project all over the world, there are some stages, and the stage of regulations and how like the current laws are going to apply to such a project. I think this comes later. To some extent, once the project becomes big enough, then there is also a part of the law that needs to adapt. Because if like a researcher publishes on the open source blockchain and says, okay, what I have found is open source and I don't want any intellectual property from it, and I say anyone can use it, then it's normal and should not be possible for anyone to come and say, okay, you found it, but I want to steal it. And I say, I'm the only one that can use it and anyone else cannot use it. Although this is medical research. And I mean, this would be absolutely, it will not make any sense. So I think to some extent here, it would be more a necessity from the law to adapt to such a protocol. But we are not like big enough yet to claim anything like this. So this is why we still like just focus on the tech.
That makes sense. My next logical question there would be, how is the community planning on expanding the reach of Etica? Like, are there talks in the work? Is there a roadmap for that built by the community? Or is it really just everyone is focused in on making the tech as powerful as possible right now?
Well, thank you very much for this question, because actually the nature of the Etica project requires that it becomes much more than just a team project or anything like this. It requires to some extent that anyone in the world can identify and can think that if they have Etica, it can also benefit them, because what we are trying to do is to create a system to accelerate medical research. So yeah, this is why the project is absolutely open. And this is also a reason why I don't want to show my face, because I don't want to become any kind of special place in this project. I started this project, but I think it belongs to humanity, and that it's something that Etica, I think, can become extremely big. It has the potential to become what I call a type 1 civilization protocol. So Bitcoin is a type 1 civilization protocol for money, and that solves the issue of the central bank monopoly, and Monero to some extent also, because it has the same characteristics as Bitcoin, but it is also fungible. And I think potentially Etica as a protocol to finance open source research all over the world could also become this kind of protocol. So yeah, what I would like, is that enough people realize the potential of such a protocol, and that it becomes much more than just a team project on anything like this. And that, then the same things that apply to Bitcoin can apply to Etica. It means that the currency is very scarce. So right now, like even as we're speaking, maybe this is good to keep this kind of information for history and anything like this. But as we were talking, the Etica market cap, just for information, is below $1 million. It's also below, I think it's around $400,000 million, something like this. So you can see that right now that the financial capacity of the project and all of this is extremely small. But the community of Etica protocol is very active. We have lots of people already in the community, and this community is still very active in all of this, not because they are looking for immediate profits and anything like this. It's because they see the potential, and they believe as well as me, that this project can become extremely much more big than it is currently. So yeah, to some extent, I think when enough people realize and understand the protocol, then we could see its true potential, and the fact that it reaches much more than a team or a small community. I think it has the potential to become a type of civilization protocol.
Yeah, the bigger it gets, the more it's accelerating the entire like medical research industry. So it's a really advantageous goal for all of people, all of humanity. The bigger it gets, the more we can speed up the research, and hopefully making us humans live better and healthier, happier lives. How can people get involved? Where can they find you? What could they do to help contribute at this stage?
Um, the community is extremely active, and we have a Discord, and we have also a Telegram. So most of the information is available on the main presentation website. It's called eticasprotocol.org. So yeah, the link to Discord and all of this is available there. And even me, I'm very available on these groups. And so yeah, if some people are interested in what we're doing with Etica and want to have a closer look, yeah, they're very welcome to come and engage the conversation. This is a product that is a community product, so a lot of people in the community also do a lot of things for Etica, and yeah, they will be able to meet the community.
I love that. And of course, everyone watching right now, I will put the links to either their X page and their website in the description of the video or right above my head, depending if you're watching on X or YouTube right now. I have one more question, which kind of gets into, we already briefly talked about it, but I want to touch on the protocol threshold because I likened it to the mining power or the hash rate on Bitcoin, where the protocol threshold for Etica is adjusting every period, or I believe it was every 5 weeks. Just like the hash rate for Bitcoin adjusts to make sure that it maintains the 10 blocks per, or a block every 10 minutes. Can you speak on the threshold for Etica?
Yes. Thank you again for this. This is another good question. So the threshold is what determines if a protocol is accepted, if a proposal is accepted or rejected. So the protocol threshold, it varies from 45% to it can go up to 99%. And so the higher it is, and the more difficult it is to get a proposal accepted, and the lower it is, the easier it is to get a proposal accepted. And so this protocol threshold is adjusted every 5 periods, so it is every 5 weeks, and it is based on the number of proposals accepted on the network. So we have a target of about 66% of proposals that needs to be accepted on average on the whole protocol. So when there are more than 66% of proposals accepted, the protocol threshold is lowered. And when there are less than 66% of proposals accepted on average over the past 5 weeks, then the protocol threshold is increased. So this way, it's like the same mechanism as the difficulty adjustment of the Bitcoin. And with this system, it guarantees to some extent that the network only accepts a certain percentage of the proposals. So we have a target of about 66%. And yeah, so that's the news of it.
It's a very interesting solution to a problem here. So I think it's fascinating. I'm very excited to see how everything continues to expand and grow. Do you have any burning things you want to let everyone who's watching know? Anything that we did not address or touch on here that you've been dying to talk about?
Well, you know, me, I could talk about Etica for hours, but yeah, I think we have covered the most essential things. And just another thing that some people just said before made me think about it, is that, yeah, with Etica, there was also this, because in the coming years with AI and the other technologies, I think there will be a lot of discoveries, medical discoveries and all of this. And the way these discoveries are made is also very important, because if it is only discovered through private research and there is no open source counterpart in the research process, in the research ecosystem, it also means that we will see in society, to some extent, we'll see like a societal impact of this, because potentially we will very soon get technologies that can make people live much more longer than they currently do. So it will mean that in the future, we will see the discrepancy between like the richer people on the planet and the others. We will see it extremely increase. And by this, I mean that right now, the richer and the poor in the world, all of this, they basically kind of have the same biological means. It means that whether the richer people in the world and the poorest, they will live like about the same number of years with some differences, but it's kind of the same. But with the emergence of these technologies, we will see people that potentially will live much, much more longer. So the concentration of power and all of this also will follow this. And the fact that if the research is not open source, it means that this discrepancy will get much, much bigger than it is today. And this is also why I think having an open source counterpart in the medical system is very important also for societal reasons, because the fact that you have something that is open source, it to some extent puts at least a minimum pressure on the private medical research system, and it's to some extent but a minimum kind of force to force them to share a minimum of the research. Because if everything depends on private research and not on, there is not absolutely nothing open source in the medical research, I think the societal impact on the long term will be absolutely huge. And on the contrary, if we have an open source system, it will be very different. So yeah, and to some extent, this is why I think Meta, what Facebook and Meta are doing for AI is also very important. And the landscape of the AI ecosystem with the presence of this open source actor, I think it will be very different than if everything was closed. And with Etica, we want to do the same for medical research.
I really actually resonate a lot with that kind of a mission statement, the ethos behind open source, because over the next 20, 30 years or so, the amount of development humans are going to go through is like nothing we've ever seen or even imagined. And so having everything open source really allows for the foundation of humans to all benefit, not just the haves versus the have-nots. So that if we're trying to prevent massive gaps in society, we have to move forward in an open source manner. Otherwise, it's just, you get the dystopian future versus the hopefully utopian future. But I really appreciate you, Kevin, coming on here.
Yeah, I appreciate talking with you, Patrick. It was very, very good. Yeah.